Welcome to Coming Out and Beyond. This is a show about LGBTQIA plus stories. I am your host, Anne-Marie Zanzel, and I am a late bloomer to the queer world, and I work with people coming out later in life. I provide both coaching and mutual support groups. I have many different labels, including, but not limited to, queer, lesbian, mom, daughter, sister, friend, minister, and fiance to my lovely partner, photographer, Tonda McKay. I passionately believe in the power of storytelling to change the world. In the telling of our stories, we often can help another person to hear their own. Today, my guest is Javana, like banana. She is 40 years old, a mom to 2 kids, business owner, holistic dentist, intuitive, and tarot card reader. She used to be a fundamental evangelical Christian. She had her spiritual awakening in 2011, and then her sexual awakening in 2018. Welcome, Javana. It's so nice to have you.
Hello, thanks for having me, Anne-Marie.
It's good to see you again. It's been a while.
It has been, but
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed your leadership and your in the later in life community.
Thank you. So this is a loaded question. Javana, tell me your story.
So I'm glad that you've provided this platform for us to share our stories. So thank you for that. There's a few parts to my story, and I made a little bit of a list because I knew that I would forget something if I didn't. So I'm just going to kind of give you the really short version, beginning to end, and hopefully, the next minute or two, and then we can dive into some more specifics.
Okay.
So the part that I want to talk about quite a bit is the religious part.
Okay.
So I was born in 1980, and my family of origin was pretty growing up chaotic, lots of alcoholisms and addictions to drugs. My parents weren't very religious and didn't provide us with any kind of spirituality, but I did go see family members in the summertime and would spend a pretty good amount of time there, and they would take us to church. So the contrast was very stark, going from a lot of, partying and my parents' friends over all the time, and me kind of being the adult watching all of the kids, and then going to my family members where I could just be a kid and things were calm, and it was like a relief, really. So when I was there one summer at age 10, my aunt presented me with the Sinner's Prayer and said that I could say this prayer and I would accept Jesus into my heart, and then I would be able to go to heaven. And the alternative, if I did not say the prayer, was that I would, burn in hell for all eternity with the devil. So I say the prayer.
Great options there.
Pretty, black and white, very black and white. So I said the prayer. I continued with my, gravitation toward what seemed like peaceful with religion and church. And as soon as I got my driver's license when I was in high school, I drove myself to church every Sunday.
Wow.
And then that continued. I moved away. I graduated high school when I was 17, and I moved away from my parents' house about 5 hours south. I grew up in California, and I moved in at my grandma's house and continued to found a church down there that was a very large college group at a mega church, and did that for about 10 years until I moved to Michigan to go to dental school, and then found a church community here. And that church community actually ended up breaking apart over the gay issue. So that was an interesting part of the story. And then I moved away from that community to Battle Creek, Michigan, which is where I bought my dental practice. And so I'm here in this community now. So I met my kid's dad when I was at that mega church college group. That's where we met. And so we met there when I was 18. We got married when I was 20. And then we were together for 17 years married. And when I realized that I wasn't straight in 2018, I told him. And then we went down the road of divorce. And now we share 50-50 custody of our kids. The person that I ended up having my awakening with was just a friend, and there wasn't any sexual anything really. We were only friends.
In our community, we typically call them catalysts, which means it's like this woman that opens the
door.
Well, a woman or a man, I guess, right. That opens up the door for you. So would you term her a catalyst?
I think actually she is the one who introduced me to that term.
So yes.
So yes.
Yeah.
She exited the situation pretty quickly, I think, when she had been a lesbian her whole life. And she, I think, had maybe potentially, I don't know, been a catalyst for several people. She had made some comment one time about that
toaster oven
being a thing.
You know that joke, right?
So
the joke about the toaster oven?
I don't know that.
So on Ellen, when Ellen came out in her famous episode, Laura Dern, who was the one who turned Ellen, got a toaster oven. So apparently the woman that you were with the first time around probably has a stock of toaster ovens in her closet somewhere. No pun intended. Yeah. So anyway.
Yes. So we were only ever just friends, and I just realized that I had in-love feelings for her, and that I had never felt those kind of in-love feelings for my my ex-husband. So that was a pretty big realization for me, trying to figure out what is this that I'm feeling. So I'll get to this part in just a second. I just want to finish this. Make sure I say everything I wanted to say. Oh, well, I'll get to that part. So I ended up, oh no, now I've forgotten what I wanted to say.
Well, so you ended up, so you met this woman who was your friend, and you realized that you had love feelings for her, but something that you never had for your ex-husband. So what happened next? But that was just a friendship. So what happened next after that?
It was just a friendship. That was telling my ex-husband that was pretty devastating for him, understandably. So this goes back to, this is what I wanted to say. It goes back to the evangelical Christianity part of my story. So when we met, I was 18 years old, and I had dated like a few people in high school, guys. Hadn't dated any women, was not aware at all about my attraction to women. And then I hadn't had any long-term relationships, and I knew, because I was in this very evangelical box, that I was going to abstain from having sex until I was married anyways. And then pair that with me being very biologically oriented, the sex ed class with all of the STD pictures really was a good motivator to look around too. So I just kind of like married the two of those things. It's like, yeah, this is an easy one for me, real easy. So I met him when I was 18, and then we got married when I was 20. And so he was the only person that I ever had a long-term relationship with, and the only person that I ever slept with. So my experience in, exploring my sexuality was non-existent because of the religious choices that I made, because of how I I wanted some semblance of peace and calm in my life.
Well, I understand that. When I just finished my autobiography, and it's really a memoir, but um, I talk about, because I came from a chaotic home as well. And so I talk about like church and school, because I went to Catholic school. It was a place of safety for me. Like I knew what was going to happen. I mean, I know that the Catholic Church wasn't a place for safety for some people, like especially a lot of young boys. But for me, it was a place where I knew what was going to happen. I excelled at school. I mean, it was a really nice, safe, lovely place when I was young. So it makes a lot of sense that I had a real gravitational pull towards that because it was a place of safety. So I understand that,
Mhm.
you know. I have some questions for you. So what you touched upon really, and actually I've been discussing this with a lot of people, is purity culture, it sounds like you got really steeped in that when you were young. So can you talk a little about that? What was it like growing up and going to church and church school through the I think it was like the 1990s, when purity culture and evangelical Christianity, fundamentalist Christianity, was really, really big. So
Mhm.
what was that like for you?
In high school, I remember limited conversations at the church that I went to there. It was an Assemblies of God church, and I still don't have a great understanding of all the different denominations in Christianity. But Assemblies of God tends to be more, from my experience, on the fundamental, literal or interpretation of
Pentecostal,
the
yeah,
Bible.
Pentecostal fundamentalist, yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So it was a lot of, making sure that you are following what the Bible says, and the Bible is interpreted in a very specific way. And there was I call it the church box. So like there's the church box, and if you have all of the right beliefs, not just be saved, but you also have to believe all these other things, then you
Mhm.
get to be in our box, and then you get to be considered a true believer. And
Mhm.
so that was, I learned what all the things were, because when my aunt, said the sinner's prayer with me, and then I learned what by going to church, like, well, you have to be this kind of Christian if you're going to be a true believer. So then for me it was, okay, no sex before marriage, like end of story. And there was a lot of talk about it in the college group that I went to. It was a mega church. The college group had over 200 students in it. The young men who were in the college group wouldn't date. There was this thing about no dating. Um, and it was, you are waiting for God to show you who your, partner for marriage is. And then you're just basically courting and marrying that person. And so there was not a lot of dating happening in the college group at all, which was really disappointing, because I was thinking to myself, I'm, graduated from high school, I'm going away to college, I'm thinking I'm going to date people, and then I get to this very conservative church and it was like, no dating. We don't do that here. And
So let me ask you, you see this stuff on TV. Was it like no kissing, nothing? Or is it would just, and if you dated, did you have a chaperone? Stuff like that? I'm just really curious.
it was not that
Bad?
it wasn't that stringent, although I know there are some very, very structured religious groups that are that way. The one that I was in was not that way. I would say the fair majority of us were with the person that we married for, a good amount of time. I mean, I was with mine for 2 years, but we were probably all doing all of the things except intercourse.
Yeah,
You
yes.
know?
I understand.
Yeah.
That's like my ex-husband and I talked about when people who were virgins, yet they did absolutely everything except
Everything else. Yeah.
penetration, and that's it. So, but you were still a virgin.
Well,
Yeah.
depends on how you
I guess depends on how you define that one. So you mentioned in your little paragraph that you wrote that you had a spiritual awakening in 2011. So it sounds like you were about in your early 30s. So what happened?
Yeah. So,
Gosh, you were already married for 10 years. Oh my gosh, that's a long time at 30.
yes, it really was. And so, I I think because this is a big part of my coming out story, I need to share this part, which is a little bit before that. So in 2005, I went away to a 6-week program at the University of Washington. Um, and I met a young woman there who we just became really close. And we shared our, our secrets, our fears, just very emotionally connected to each other. She was a lesbian and had a girlfriend, and I was married and had, my husband. But we were just extremely close. And after the program ended, she flew home. She lived in Southern California. I flew home to Central Valley, and I missed her incredibly for a very long time. And I wrestled with, like, what is this that I'm feeling? And while I was there at the program, I recognized in myself that I was attracted to her. And I got up the guts one day and I told her while we were there, and I said, I don't know how, it took me a long time to say it, but I finally said it. I said, I don't know how to say this except that I like you like that. And she said to me, oh, I kind of felt like you were going to say that. And it's, not that surprising. I guess I've had other people say it to me before. And, it's normal. It's fine. No big deal. And then she just kind of brushed it off. And then we just carried on with friendship as if I had never said it at all. And so, and then when I went home to my husband, after the program, I had all of this internal conflict because I was incredibly connected to her and longed to be with her, and all of this just things that I had never felt before.
All the
And
feels.
huh?
All the feels.
Yeah, all of the
Yeah.
feels. And I did not know, I didn't have any frame of reference for what this was or what it meant. And so, and I was still very much a good Christian girl. And so for me, what it meant was that I then had to try to save her because of what the Bible says about people who are homosexual. So I could not self reflect at that point,
Mhm.
and say, what does this mean about me? Instead, I projected onto her, you're going to go to hell. And I really don't want you to go to hell. I care about you a lot. And can you say this prayer with me? And, I want you to be saved. And she cut me out of her life, and rightfully
Mhm.
so.
Mhm.
And it's like, it's really ironic because currently in my life, there's come a situation that I've never experienced before where I'm like, okay, I really do need to just cut this off and like not have this person be part of my life anymore. So like I kind of give her props for teaching me that part back then
Mhm.
that I didn't
Mhm.
know that I would need now.
You know what was really interesting when you told her that you had a crush on her, she was just very accepting, like, and it was no big deal.
Yeah.
Now, like, she was like, so if it had been quote unquote maybe a straight girl that you had said this to, it would have been a much bigger deal for them. But she, as she was gay, she was like, okay, that's nice, but okay, let's move on. you know.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
I really just, yeah, what I really wanted was for her to say, oh, I really like you that way too. And,
Mhm.
let's leave our partners and run off together.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would have been my ideal situation rather than me having these thoughts while I'm, at home with my husband. Like, I just want to show up at her front door and I don't know what to say except for, I need to be with you. Like, it's insanity is what it was. I was completely obsessed with her and just the thoughts and just all the things. It was
Well,
really,
I think it sounds like that for the first time in your life, you were infatuated with somebody, like really infatuated with somebody.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. She was maybe your mini catalyst.
Well, she turned out later to be the catalyst.
Okay.
We
So
ended up reconnecting after I had my spiritual awakening.
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Then people
So,
want to know that part of the story too.
so I, yeah, so that was 2005. So the
Jump.
Central Valley of California is a very conservative evangelical Christian area of California. And I know a lot of people think that California is very democratic and liberal and all of these things, but really there are pockets of that. It's LA and San Francisco and maybe some of the other like hippie villages, around the.
Yes, California
But
has very
for the
conservative.
most part, it's very conservative. So the thing that actually was, I'll use the word catalyst because you used it before, of getting us out of that thinking was going to dental school here in Michigan at the University of Michigan. When I got in here, I moved to Ann Arbor. And Ann Arbor, Michigan is like, I would call it like its own little bubble of a planet on planet Earth, because it's like living on another planet. It is so open and just really interesting place to come to when you are such a fundamentalist.
Mm-hmm.
And then having, everything opening up, and it's like, well, we're not going to be judgmental and we're going to be accepting and all of these things. And at that point, I had felt a little bit of a pull to pull back on my own spiritual development, because I felt like it would eventually cause my ex-husband and I to diverge a lot if I kept going down my spiritual path, because I felt like he didn't really want to change or do anything different. And so when we came to Ann Arbor, I knew I was going to be busy with dental school. And so if we were going to go to church, I just kind of left it up to him to find it and choose it and all these things. And he grew up in a very social justice oriented church. So he ended up finding a church that was kind of in between. I would say it was called the Ann Arbor Vineyard. Pastor Ken Wilson was the head pastor at the time. And he talked a lot about this centered set approach, which is where it doesn't matter who you are or what you believe, but if you're facing the center toward Jesus, then you have a place here. And that was like completely, like, I was like, this is like heretical. There's no box. What do I do with this? I don't know what. And I was like kind of scared. I was like, is this wrong? Should I even be here? Like and in dental school, I was the president of the Christian Dental Association. And I held weekly Bible studies at the dental school, and just like, I was still very much in my, evangelical thinking. Mm-hmm. So until it took probably a couple of years, but I think Ken really had a way of opening my eyes. And what I ended up experiencing at that church was, I would say, like, it was very freeing, and the box was gone, and the judgment was then gone. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like a loving person now.
Can I ask you a quick question? Was the judgment gone of other people or of yourself?
At that point, I would say of other people. Mm-hmm. Of myself came probably a little later. Mm-hmm. Once things started unraveling for me and I kind of started dipping my toe into, I was always praying and asking God to show me the way and to lead me and to guide me. And I have a very active spiritual life. And so when I pray, things happen and God shows me or brings things to me or people to me or messages, or it's always been that way for me. And the thing that really changed my outlook was the book called Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. Mm-hmm. And that book is about a young Hindu boy, and he is telling his life story, basically. And in that book, He has the same story that I have, basically. I mean, he is a young person of faith who prays and asks for guidance, and God shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's going on a journey with his friend, and they don't know where they're going or what they're doing, and they get on a plane or a train, and they travel to this place, and they just say, okay, where are we supposed to go? What are we doing here? And then, this person will come, or they'll see a sign or something, and then they'll know, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. And that's very much that's how I lived my life as well. It was very much just on the edge of my experience, riding life as just kind of wherever the Holy Spirit would lead me, is what I would say.
Well, would you
Now
say,
I use
would,
different terminology, but that
yeah.
book changed things for me, because it showed me that this person is exactly the same as I am, praying to God the same way that I pray, and receiving answers the same way that I receive answers. And so what fundamental Christianity had taught me was that we have the way and the truth and the light, and there's only one way, and it's this way.
Mm-hmm.
So when I read that book, it was like, oh my God, they lied to me. They lied to me.
Well, it's really interesting because I always think that as humans that there are so many different religions because as humans we're incapable of listening to one voice. So there's lots of different human experiences sharing the nature of the divine. And so it makes a lot of sense that you might find it this place. You can, like, I went to seminary at Hartford Seminary, which has got the oldest Christian Muslim relationship program in the country, and I studied Islam for now I'm not going to share any knowledge of it, but because it's spotty at this point. But it was about love, and it was about love, and it was about the nature of the divine. And in many ways, people who follow the path of Islam are often, they pray 5 times a day. They are much more spiritually connected than some people who follow the Christian path. So I understand. Like, you read that book and you're like, what? Wait a minute. This person who is a Hindu, I assume, right? Was he? The
Yeah,
yogi? Yeah.
He was a Hindu, and he brought Kriya Yoga and self-realization to the United States,
Mm-hmm.
is what he did. And so he has a self-realization fellowship. And after I was done reading the book, I was like, I want to sign up to be a member of the self-realization fellowship. And so
And did you?
I did. I got all the lessons, and there's these, energizing exercises you can do. They're like yoga stuff.
So had you left Christianity at that point?
When I read that book, I would say I threw it out the window. Yeah,
Okay.
it was done. It was just done.
And
There were, like I said, there were like breadcrumbs along the way, things that slowly but surely opened my eyes, opened my worldview. The diversity training in dental school also was very important and instrumental. And I was part of the scholars program, and there were I got to know some of the other students pretty closely, and one of them was a Muslim. And
mhm.
he said, I think it's great that, you're a Christian. I'm a Muslim. He said the same thing. I pray 5 times a day. I
Mhm.
do all of these things. I'm very, spiritually connected. And just seeing the love that he had, and how he was so gentle in his approach to other people. And it was just really beautiful to
Mhm.
witness, and to get to be so close with so many people who were very different than me, and just seeing like, we're all the same. Like, we're really not that different.
No, we're not. So I have a question for you. So this is going on, you're going through the 2000 and teens, and then you hit 2018. So I'm assuming you read the book, The Journey of the Yogi book that you read before that.
I
So
read that in 2011.
so right about the same time. So
Yeah.
that was your spiritual awakening.
That was part of my spiritual awakening. The other part was, I had my daughter in 2011 as well. And as I was pregnant, I started having really a lot of anxiety, I would say, about having a child with somebody who drinks alcohol. And my ex-husband was nothing like my parents at all, but he did like to have wine or scotch or whatever, at night. And it just terrified me that I was going to be bringing a child into the world and I was in a relationship with somebody who used alcohol, and I just couldn't handle it. And on top of all of that, I had learned in my childhood that feelings weren't safe. So I had shut down my feelings.
Mhm.
And when you're pregnant, there is a torrent of emotion that just wrecks your body. And I did not know what to do with that at all. So I was like, I think I'm going crazy. I feel like an alien in my own body. And I went and I sought therapy because I thought, surely there is something wrong with me. So I went to therapy. I got together with a therapist who did this certain type of therapy called EMDR, eye movement rapid desensitization, and it's for trauma healing. And so she led me through some exercises that helped me realize and separate the fact that, my dad isn't my husband, and I could then go on in my marriage and I would be okay with this, separation fully, like whatever exactly it does in your brain. They're not the same person. I don't have to be scared anymore.
And a lot of the people that a lot of my clients have had EMDR. A lot of us come from a pretty big trauma background. And so they have found it extraordinarily helpful. I know that. Yeah.
Oh, I sought therapy for that, had my baby. And once I threw out the Christianity thing, I didn't quite know what to do or where to go. I was still going to the same church. And I think it was 2013, that church split over the gay issue, actually. The head pastor, Ken Wilson, and the associate pastor, Emily. And then there was another pastor, Donnell Weich. And Ken and Emily were on the side of, we're going to be full inclusion, and Donnell was not okay with full inclusion, including gay people serving as clergy in the church. So it went all the way up to the highest ranking National Vineyard thing, and they had a paper that came out about it. And so the church split. Pastor Donnell kept the Ann Arbor Vineyard Church, and then Pastor Emily and Ken went and started a new church that was all inclusive and affirming and all the things. And that was just about a year before I moved to Battle Creek. So at that point I was like, well, I just don't even think I need church anymore. Like, this is insane. And I had a new baby, and I just had my second baby, my son. So life was very, very, very chaotic at that time. But we moved over here, and I started going to the Unity Church. And that is a very inclusive church, which I found really beautiful. They introduced meditation. They had a person come in who did sound bath healing. They had a person come in who did tarot card readings. And I was like, whoa, what is this?
My partner is a recovering Southern Baptist, and she's still afraid of tarot card readings. She's like, no, I can't do that.
I'm taking a tarot mastery class right now. To me. But so I went to that church for a while, and then I attended a Lutheran church for a while. But the thing that helped get me back in touch with my intuition or my feelings was a Kabbalah teacher. She was just a mystic and a Kabbalist. And I went and I took classes with her, and we did some art therapy as well, and some visual guided imagery painting and things like that. And so she really got me back in touch with, like, oh, I have a voice inside of me, and I can listen to that voice. And when I started listening to that voice, then things started kind of falling apart in my marriage, because he was very, and I was very happy to have somebody who, was the leader, the thinker, the one who, I would go to him with all the things and he'd be like, okay, well, we're going to do this, or we're going to think about it this way. And so it just felt the stability that he provided and the safety and the security of all of that was what I really appreciated and wanted and needed in that time of my life when I was married to him.
Mhm.
And then that Kabbalah class and the spirituality and just starting to learn about all the other religions. And then Rob Bell was real big at that time. I don't know if you remember
Yep.
him. He stepped away from his evangelical stuff and started to go the more spirituality route. And then I read a book about hope beyond hell. And that kind of opened my eyes to the idea that like maybe there isn't hell. Maybe everything
There isn't.
wild and there is no fear. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, what if that is true? So
Well, how can you have a hell if you have a loving God? You can't reconcile the two.
yeah.
It's impossible. You can't reconcile the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that was actually the thing that was the hardest part for me of my evangelical Christianity was my little sister chose to be agnostic and she didn't want to have anything to do with this evangelical Christianity. I was really torn up that she was going to go to hell because she didn't want anything to do with it. And I just was like, how can but once I finally let go of the hell thing, I was like, oh, thank goodness. Like, she won't go to hell. Well, it's okay. Everybody's okay. Oh my gosh, there is no fear.
Yes.
What?
So, speaking of no fear, so when you started coming out, so what about that piece of the story? So you had your experience and you were with somebody who turned out to be a friend. So what was that experience? And I know that you've tried on a couple labels over the last couple of years. So let's talk a little bit about that. So what was that experience like for you?
Okay.
Let me
So
ask you a really quick question. Let me ask you a really quick question.
Yeah.
Do you think that reading that book and realizing that you didn't have to worry about hell anymore, there was no fear? And a lot of the things that happen when we're coming out later in the life is fear-based. It's fear-based. So do you think realizing that, oh, wait a minute, if there's no hell, then no matter what choices I make in my life, and the choice is not whether you're gay or bisexual, the choice is what you do with it, whether you're going to come out.
How you handle
Did it make you feel braver?
I was not afraid of going to hell at that point. So I was not afraid of what it meant for me. Did it make me braver? I think the thing that made me brave was learning to trust my own voice and saying it, because that was also not something that was safe when I was a child, voicing what you wanted, what you needed, who you were.
Well, and also
self,
oftentimes emotionally intuitive little girls are pretty smart about what's going on in the home.
Yeah.
And so when that's brought up, a lot of times, we're told, no, everything's fine.
Right.
Or, so like we're pretty aware of what's going on. And, there's a lot of pretending in alcoholic homes.
Right.
And so we learn to not trust our own voices.
Exactly. And that's really the part that I regained in all of this is learning to trust myself.
Yes, exactly. 100%.
So I don't think that I do think that helped with the bravery because it was a part of myself that was such a part of my identity for so long. And I was able to drop that part of my identity and realize that I'm actually not just okay, I'm better than I was. So when I got to this point of realization where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling things that I've never felt before. And I know that I need to be honest about it. And there was a conversation that happened and I'm always asking for clarity and for signs.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the times I was with the person who was my catalyst. So what happened was I ended up, I had my spiritual awakening, and I wanted to apologize to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I told my ex-husband about it, because back in 2005, when I came back home from the University of Washington and I was feeling very conflicted about everything, I told him everything. I told him that I was attracted to her. I told him, all of the things that I was feeling, and that I felt like this was the devil tempting me. I had to resist the devil so that he would flee from me, and then I could get back onto my, straight and narrow path, which is what I did. So this time around, I told him, I said, I really feel horrible about trying to save her, because I'm getting like how that could make her feel, um, in my spiritual awakening, and oh my gosh, I tried to save so many people because I believed that they were going to go to hell. And it really did put a wedge between me and my best friend, and my parents, my sister, just everybody in my life who didn't want to be in the box. And
Mm-hmm.
I would try so hard to get everybody in the box. My gay uncle, he's like, you were insufferable. And so I'm like, yeah, I was a true believer. Like, I really believed in this stuff, and I knew that I had to do this if I was going to go to heaven. And so it was just so a part of who I was. But putting all that aside, getting to the point now where I am able to realize that that not only isn't true, but I've hurt a lot of people along the way. And so I made a list of people, and I was like, I really need to apologize to people. And when it came to apologizing to her, I, talked to my then husband, and I was like, hey, I feel like I should reach out to her and tell her I'm sorry. And he was like, yeah, you should definitely reach out and tell her. And so that was kind of my green light to reach out, was the fact that he gave me permission,
Mm-hmm.
to reach out and just tell her, I'm a different person now. I don't believe the same things I used to believe, and I just really wanted to tell you I'm sorry. And much to my surprise, she responded, and then we started talking on the phone, and just, she lived in California and I was in Michigan. But it was very easy for us to reconnect and, connect on we had a lot of actual similar things in common. And she actually came out to stay with me and my family for Thanksgiving
Mm-hmm.
that year. And so we got to spend some time together. And then she flew home, and I had that same feeling when she was leaving again. It was like something about her and I together felt so connected, like I was missing something without her. And I said that to her. I said, I feel like I'm missing a part of me when I'm not with you. And she said, yeah, I feel the same thing. And I said, well, why do you think that is? And she's like, because such good friends are hard to come by. And so
Mm-hmm.
she was very like, we're friends. And for me, when I read that text message that said friends, I was like, oh, like friends. And I bawled my eyes out the whole way home, dropping her off at the airport, because I was like, no, I love you. Like, I didn't know at that time, still not sure if I knew at that time that I was feeling in love, but that's what it felt like to, it was,
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to be with her.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me a while to kind of unpack those feelings. That was in November, Thanksgiving. And then I flew out to California to go see my family. And I went to go see her at her apartment in Sacramento, which is just a couple hours away from where my family lives. So when I was there, the thing that woke me up to, oh, this is what I'm feeling, and I've never felt it from my husband, was a conversation that I had with her. And I told her, I think that you're the only person that I've ever felt this way about, and I'm not sure what it means. And her response to me was, so you've never felt like this for your husband? And I just was like, no, I've never felt this way for my husband. And then it kind of hit me. I was like, oh my goodness.
All the pieces fell into place.
Yeah, it just hit me so hard after that. And got home, the ex-husband and husband took the kids and went to go visit his family for a week. I flew home to go back to work, and I was there by myself for about a week. And I bawled my eyes out every single day. I kept my shit together when I was at work, and I would literally get in the car door would close, and the waterworks would start, and I just lost it. And I could not believe that this was what was coming to me. And I just knew that I had to tell him. And that's why I was crying so much, because I just knew that this was going to be.
Well, and I think you also knew that your life was going to change once you told him. And you worked really, really hard to get your life to where it was.
Mm-hmm.
You had worked really hard to get it there, and then you're like, oh shit. My life is going to change. And like you and I have seen a lot of people come out. And so, there's like this 6-month year period where people just sort of, it's that from Al-Anon, what is it? It's awareness, acceptance, and action. And, you're getting to this awareness, you had your awareness, but then you have to get to the acceptance stage. And usually awareness and acceptance is, I don't know, 6 months, years, sometimes years for people. But, you realized that things were going to change. And once you told him, things were going to change.
And the interesting part about it was when I wrote the letter, I've always been one to write letters. I've never been one to be able to verbally say something. I always have to get it out in a letter. And so I wrote him a letter. And when I wrote the letter, I said to him, I don't know what this means for our marriage, but I just knew that I had to be honest with you. And then he's had a lot of grieving for, many, many weeks. And we decided to go to a therapist. And it was actually the second meeting with the therapist where I realized what the feelings I was feeling meant about my sexuality, because I had to have somebody else reflect it to me for me to be like, oh my goodness. And what she said to me was, okay, Javana, it sounds like so-and-so stimulated a sexual awakening in you. And I just everything just shut down, and I was in shock. And I'm like, wait, does that mean that I wasn't sexually awake? What does this mean? Does this mean that I'm a lesbian?
There's an Instagram account called "Oh fuck, I'm a lesbian."
What? And she was actually the one, she found some articles about later in life lesbians, and she gave them to me, and she said, this might resonate with you. Why don't you read through it? And I read through it, and I was like, oh my goodness, what if this is it? So I told my best friend, right away. I don't tell, she's probably the first one I tell everything to. And she said to me, I always wondered why you weren't boy crazy in high school or junior high. Like, oh, right, because everybody else was going crazy, and I was just like, whatever. And then I'm like, yeah, I always thought the girls were so pretty. Oh my gosh. What? So, small town USA and gay slurs in abundance. And then, of course, the evangelical Christianity and all of
you
that.
didn't have a shot to figure it out when you were.
There was no way that I could have seen that until I threw off the.
Well, especially with church providing what it did for you. Safety from the chaos. Yeah.
Yeah.
that just wasn't your journey
No,
to
it
figure
was.
it out. You had to do it when you're a little later, which is, I think everybody's journey is so valid, but sometimes it's nice sometimes to figure things out a little bit later. I think we react with it with maturity about things because sometimes, except, when we're in our second adolescence, we're not very mature.
Yeah.
So I'm going to wrap us up now. And I really loved your story. So the book again that you changed your life so much, because that's the book. When I asked the question, like, have you read a book or a movie that's changed your life? What was it again?
It's called The Autobiography of a Yogi
Yogi. Yes, I've
by
heard that.
Paramahansa Yogananda.
Okay. And so did you have did you have a yoga? Did you have a coming out song?
I did actually, and it was one of the other later in life queer people that they posted it on one of the Facebook forums, and she was singing in her hairbrush to it. And I listened to that song over and over and over and over again. And it is by Gem and the Holograms, and it's called The Way I Was.
Ah, okay. And so what's the best thing about your life now that you've figured so much out? And it's like you're so not done.
Oh no. I
Yeah.
mean, we didn't get to the other part of the story. I figured out.
We're going to have to, we got to break that up. You'll have to come back and give me the other part of the story. Anna has a 3-hour episode.
Right.
We're going to have you come back. I want you to come back and share the other part of the story. So because you can't, so we'll stop at the lesbian part. Okay. So
Yeah.
the
So
best thing about your life now.
I just feel like I'm free, and I get to be authentically who I am, and that this is the most awesome part of it all, is that the woman that I was in love with, her authenticity allowed me to realize who I am. And my authenticity now is opening up. All people all around me they just start talking to me and telling me their stories and things. And I'm like, oh wow, like we can connect on so much stuff. So I really enjoy that part of life right now, where I'm just being who I am, and it's okay to be me. Like, I'm so good. It's okay.
And you're not going to hell.
Exactly.
Oh, well, you are delightful as always. And seriously, I'd love you to come back. We could do a Javana part 2. Seriously, I'm really serious about that. So I would love to hear the next part of the story after that. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your story. I do believe that, you sharing this part of your story of leaving conservative Christianity may be so helpful for other people who may be scared and maybe still hold those tenets that you used to so strongly believe in. So thank you so much. You are helping somebody today. I know you are. All right, my friend. Thank you.